All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And if anybody else trickles in just a few minutes, I'll get them all set up with our meeting. But welcome to our guest speaker series. I believe this is number 4 at this point. So this is pretty exciting. And this has been a joint venture between Workforce Solutions Capital Area, the Region 13 Education Service Center, and Ascension Seton. We've all been working together to bring this together so that we can educate both teachers and students about all the many healthcare careers that are available. Today, I'm so excited to have Dr. Hernandez with us to tell us a little bit about nursing and her experiences, as well as her role as a faculty member for Texas Tech University. My name is Josh Mitchell, and I'm going to be your moderator today, and I work for Education Service Center Region 13, which supports a lot of school districts in a pretty wide geographic region in Central Texas. All right, so just to let you know our agenda, went a little bit too fast there. Our agenda is we're going to do a quick roll call here in just a minute with introductions. I'll be asking Dr. Hernandez some questions about her career and work as a faculty member for Texas Tech. And then you'll have an opportunity to pose some questions as well. And then finally, we'll finish off with thank yous and goodbye. So if you joined one of our guest speaker series before, I'd like to just do a quick introduction so that Dr. Hernandez knows where you are coming from and who you are. And if you wouldn't mind going up to your toolbar, finding that chat button on your toolbar, open that chat box. And if you could just tell us your name and what school district or employer you work for, I'll get us started and we'll wait for your responses to come in. So happy to have Dr. Hernandez with us today. She comes to us with a wealth of nursing experience and educational experience. She is a doctor of nursing practice, which is, I think, an amazing career journey as she's kind of gone through all the different types of positions and education in nursing. And she has pretty extensive experience working in the neonatal intensive care unit with Ascension Seton, which is where you treat the little tiny babies who are just currently, she is a faculty member for Texas Tech and I believe an associate professor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, an associate professor.
Assistant professor, sorry.
Assistant professor, I'm sorry. And that's with the, is that with the accelerated?
It is.
Okay.
Accelerated BSN.
Awesome. The accelerated Bachelor's to Science in Nursing program at Texas Tech here in Austin. So it's really cool to have her today. And I want to just kick it off, Dr. Hernandez. Could you just tell us a little bit about your educational and work journey? Maybe start with some of your experiences in high school and tell us kind of how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So I've been a nurse for 20 years this year. So it sounds unbelievable even to myself that it's been 20 years. In high school, I took the basic route to graduate, didn't do anything special really. Back then, they didn't have all this awesome stuff with these workforce programs you guys have. And a lot of times you guys can get some college credit in high school. I think by the time I got into nursing school, that was just starting to come out. So I just had a very basic high school journey. I always wanted to be a nurse, so there was no question about that. And although there's lots of different ways, and hopefully I can talk about that throughout this meeting this morning, there's lots of different ways to become a nurse. But I actually took the very traditional route. I graduated from high school and went straight into university. I went to UT San Antonio and got my 2 years of PreReqs done, which is pretty common out there. Wherever you go, you'll do some prerequisites. And then you apply to nursing school. And I went to nursing school at UT Health Sciences Center in San Antonio and graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, which again, there's lots of routes to do that, but that's the pretty traditional route. I was a nurse for a couple years, and I will say that I'm a big nerd. I love school. I find that you're never done learning. Even as I am now, I'm still not done learning, and I can't say for certain that I would never go back to school, because I might. I knew that I wanted to go on past my BSN even when I was in school. So after a couple years, I went back to UT Austin and earned my master's degree in nursing. And then after that, I decided just to kind of see where it went, worked a lot, got into some educational things, which I'll talk about. And I waited 10 years to go back to get my DNP, which is a long time, but it was a good 10 years. And I needed to do that to kind of get my feet wet in the nursing world and to have some experience behind me to do that. And so I went back to UT Austin again, which hence the burnt orange and the Longhorns, even though I work for Texas Tech. They love being on Zoom meetings with me for that reason. But went back to UT Austin and did earn a doctorate degree, doctorate of nursing practice degree, which is a practice doctorate versus the traditional research doctorate that you might hear of in a PhD. And so those are the 3 degrees that I do hold. As far as work, I went, and again, I graduated in San Antonio from nursing school and went into Methodist Children's Hospital and worked in the neonatal intensive care unit. One really cool thing that I'll talk about hopefully later is all the different things you can do with a nursing degree. And so after a couple years, I was young and I wanted to do some exploring. And so I became a travel nurse and actually went to Honolulu, Hawaii, and worked in the neonatal intensive care unit in Hawaii for a while. And then that brought me back to Austin, where I came back to Ascension Seton and worked in the neonatal intensive care unit for a good decade or so before I went into teaching full time. And at that point, I taught for Austin Community College for a good 7 or 8 years. And then I've been with Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center for the past 5 years, teaching in their accelerated BSN program. So lots of different things in my 20 years, but it's been fun.
That is an amazing journey, and I appreciate you sharing the importance of always being open to being educated and continual learning, because that is so important as a healthcare practitioner, and it's something that you always do. Before we move on to the next question, could you tell us a little bit about the difference between a research doctorate and a practicing doctorate? What does that look like?
Yes. And I actually know quite well because I actually started in a PhD program. I thought I wanted to do research. It's a long journey. A PhD, typically you can earn that anywhere from 4 to 6 years if you're going full time. Sometimes it takes longer if you're going part time. And it's for those that are really devoted to and passionate about doing nursing research or any kind of any field you're in. You can get a PhD in education or a PhD in other fields, but it's a really passionate work journey toward research and researching your field of study. For a DNP, which is a practice doctorate, it's more focused on the practice behind nursing. And so specifically, many nurse practitioners will go through and get a DNP. And it actually it's highly recommended, I think, now that nurse practitioners go further and earn that DNP. There's actually 2 tracks for it. And I actually am not a nurse practitioner, although I work with lots of incredible ones. But there's an executive leadership track, which is what I earned. And so my master's degree is in nursing administration, and my DNP is in executive leadership in nursing. But first and foremost, and I hope you will see this about me as we go through this morning, I'm a bedside nurse at heart. I love what I do. I love working with patients. I love being in the hospital. Even after being away from the bedside for so long, a year ago, I went back to the NICU and worked for a year at the bedside because I missed it so much and I wanted to be there again. So it was very important to me. I realized about a year and a half into my PhD work that I didn't want to do that much research. I liked it, but I enjoy working with people. I enjoy working with patients. And so a DNP takes that, it's actually a partnership really with the PhD. They do the research, they have all the think clouds and come up with the new ideas, and the DNP applies them to the bedside. So it's an application of that research process, but I hope that's the answer you're looking for.
That's really interesting. I did not know the DNP broke into different tracks. So that is really fascinating. That's cool to learn. Looking at question number 2. So you've talked a lot about your passion for being a bedside nurse. What made you originally decide to choose a career as a nurse? You said you kind of already had that idea as a high school student graduate.
So yeah, I wish I had this like really grand thing to tell you about what, inspired me to become a nurse. But the truth of the matter is I don't remember ever wanting to do anything else. That's not common, I will say. Many people, decide later on, even in my program, an accelerated program, it's a second degree program. So they've already got a degree in something else and then come back to nursing. But for me, it's always been there for me. And I think back, and I think the reason it's always been what I wanted to do is I like caring for people. That's the art behind nursing. It's a work of your heart. And really, I'm very passionate about caring for people, at their most vulnerable times in life, really. Even in what I do right now, although I'm not caring for patients actively, I'm still caring for my students. I'm still helping them and supporting them through their journey to become a nurse. So I think that's why it's always just been part of what I wanted to do, is that I enjoy taking care of people. And I don't remember ever wanting to do anything else. My mom tells me stories about when I was little, I would draw pictures and it would be of me being a nurse. So I think, again, that's not common. I think many people decide that later on in life, but for me, it was always there.
And I think that's awesome, because our last guest speaker, for anybody who's able to join us last time, she had kind of gone through some different pathways before she got there, but you kind of had a dedicated pathway that you knew it was right for you. So, students who are out there, it's always a little bit different for everybody. You may already know what you want, but it's okay if you change later on and decide, because Dr. Hernandez works directly with students who have already gotten a degree, a bachelor's degree, and are interested now in transitioning into nursing and serving
We
others.
work with some pretty incredible students. We have former teachers, we have former musicians, we have business people. We've actually had some medical doctors that have come from other countries that it's just easier to go the nursing route when they get into the United States. So many, many different people that come back to nursing eventually in their career.
That is awesome. That's really cool. I'm glad those opportunities are available for lots of people out there. Looking at number 3, you've talked about the importance of working, with people and bedside and talking with them and being a caring person. What are some of your other favorite aspects of being a nurse?
So first and foremost, I think you mentioned all the ones I would say are on top. That's why I do it, and it's why I continue to do it. But I think a great thing about being a nurse at the very top as well is the variety you have and what you can do. There are so many things you can do as a nurse. There are so many different places you can work at. And I know that's the next question you have on that.
You can go into it if you want.
It's just, you never get bored. And you also always have a job. They're always looking for nurses wherever you are across the nation and the world, really. The year 2020 is actually the year of the nurse. It's the year that they're promoting nursing as a profession. And so I would have to say just that one of my favorite parts of being a nurse is just the variety and choices you have as a career. And some of the different career options that are out there. I've always been sort of traditional in my approach in the hospital and working in an ICU environment, but there's clinics and there's doctor's offices and there's home health agencies. Some of the best times I had in nursing school were with home health nurses going into people's homes and taking care of them. So there's education, and not just as faculty at universities or community colleges, but also in the hospital. There's lots of educational opportunities to teach new nurses that are just graduating nursing school and coming in. Let me think of some others, but there's, even places like businesses, like Dell Computers has nurses. A lot of different factories that you come across, big factories, will have occupational nurses that work there to help their employees. And in nursing school, I also got to experience that. We got to go to a factory and work with an occupational nurse. So I'd say that kind of combining those two things that's what makes nursing great, is that there's always something for somebody. You can go into offices, you can work in the hospitals, there's ICUs. There's also advanced practice things, which I know you have a question on that you can get into as well. So it's just, you're your only limit to what you want to do in nursing, which I think is great.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And, I have some friends who work kind of on the social work side of nursing. So they became nurses and then got into serving people and making sure that their homes are correctly set up and things were safe before they were released from the hospitals. My wife works in public health, and she works for nurses who are public health oriented and trying to solve population-based problems. So you're right. There are just so many pathways out there, and it really is pretty amazing.
It is.
It's cool. Thinking about some of those career options, there's a lot of different pathways to take. Hopefully you don't mind, I'm going to just digress just a little bit, but what are some of the educational pathways that students could take to get to that nursing degrees? I think there's a lot of where you can kind of come in and come out of education.
As far as what to get to become a nurse, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, maybe we can just focus on the RN or BSN, one of those.
There are lots of routes to become a nurse. Don't ever let money or the fear of a university or anything like that become something that holds you back. There's lots of routes to get to become a nurse. Sort of a less common one nowadays is because it's just gotten less common over the years, is the licensed vocational nurse, an LVN. You don't really have a lot of those programs out there anymore, but they still do exist. That's sort of a 1-year program. I think you come in and you get a license to practice vocational nursing, or it's an LPN, I think is what it's called. Other than that, the RN is the most common and will probably provide the most opportunity for you working wherever you go. And there's two routes to obtain an RN. There's the associate's degree, which I mentioned I worked for ACC for 8 years before going to Texas Tech. So I will say, just to let everyone know, that an RN, you have to go through 2 years of the nursing program, and that's the same no matter where you go, pretty much. The same rigor, the same amount of classes, really. It's a 2-year nursing program, whether it's an ADN, which is the associate degree, or a BSN, which is a bachelor's degree. There's a couple of differences in classes, but those 2 years are pretty standard. For an associate's degree, there's not as many prerequisites that go into that. So typically students can come in and earn an associate's degree anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years. Usually you can finish with an associate's degree in nursing. You take the same NCLEX, which is the state nursing exam that you take after you finish nursing school. So whether it's an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, it's the same exam that you take at the end, and you earn an RN, a registered nurse license, at the end of that. The route that I went is the bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, which is usually a 4 to 4.5 year program, however you look at it, which there is more nursing prerequisites that go in that, because you're meeting the standards for your bachelor's degree, not just the nursing portion. And then again, you go into the 2 years of nursing school after that, which is, again, pretty standard. Those classes are pretty, wherever you go, they remain the same pretty much. And then you finish with a bachelor's degree. But both the associate's degree and bachelor's degree will get you to an RN. The cool thing right now is that they've even opened that up even wider, and places like Austin Community College have an RN to BSN program nowadays, which is what appeals to many people, especially if they're not sure they want to get a bachelor's degree, and they go in and they go to ACC for a couple years and earn their associate's degree, take the exam, become an RN, work some, and then decide, hey, you know what, I really do want to get a bachelor's degree. I do need that. It's important. ACC opened up their first RN to BSN program last year, I believe. I think it's a small program still, but they're growing it. And then most universities, I know even at Texas Tech, we have our large RN to BSN program where you can come back after you earn your associate's degree and then get your bachelor's degree. So there's many, many ways to become a nurse. There is not one size fits all. You have to find what fits for you and your family life, or your pathway that you have established for yourself, but there's lots of ways to become an RN.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's just amazing, the different pathways that are available. And I've had some friends who have done, like you said, they got their RN and then practiced. I mean, honestly, they wanted to make some money, but they, at the same time, they kind of realized that after a few years of getting that practice and maturing in the profession, that they were ready to get their bachelor's. And they did kind of that bridge program where they were able to do some online classes in order to complete the prerequisites for that bachelor's. And it was a great experience for them, and it worked really well. So
I will add, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't say this.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for ACC for a long time, and I worked with some of the most incredible nurses I've ever worked with are associate degree nurses and RNs that I've worked with in all the years. But most hospital environments are encouraging you to get a bachelor's degree. They usually have some sort of, I don't want to call it a quota, but some sort of percentage they like to keep at, where they have so many BSNs on staff and so many ADNs on staff. So even the ones, when I had students graduating from Austin Community College with an associate's degree, we were always highly encouraging them to go back through an RN to BSN program when they could, to end up earning that bachelor's degree. So I think it's fair that I need to say that, because it is highly encouraged in the hospital environment. Some of the other environments aren't as picky about that, but in the hospitals, they're changing. It was a recommendation several years ago to encourage those to have a bachelor's degree in nursing. There's research behind it too.
Sure. And that is awesome advice, because I've heard the same thing. So thank you for sharing. I think that's a great nugget to kind of hold on to as, students are choosing their degree paths in the future. So awesome. Thank you. Thinking back to high school, and even maybe some high school students that you've worked with in the past, what advice would you give to our high school students who are interested in joining the field? What can they do to prepare?
So I think back to myself first and think about what I did to help. And then I'll give you some information about what there is available today, because there's a lot more available today than there was when I was in school. But I think a couple of things I remember doing that really solidified to me that I was in the right path was one thing, and I know this is not possible for everyone, but I worked my last year in high school, my senior year, I worked in the nurse's office part-time. So I went to school in the morning, and then I worked with the school nurse in the afternoons, just for a couple hours every day. And that really helped me to know what a nurse does and how they work, the different responsibilities they had. And it just really helped further solidify that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have any questions when I went past that, because even though it wasn't the same as a hospital or a clinical type environment, it still is an RN duty and responsibility that I got to oversee. But even if you don't have that available to where you are, where you can work with the nurse, although I know most schools do that, even just meeting with her or him and talking with them and asking questions about, because that's an easy access for you right there at your school that you're at. The other thing that I remember doing that was helpful is volunteering, because I know that, that gave me some insight into what it was to care for people. And even at places like, food pantries or places where you're visiting with more vulnerable populations, that's what you're going to have in the hospital. So even just getting to kind of know those people or people in general, and working with different types of people and learning to work with different types of people, because in the hospitals or clinics or wherever you are, you're going to come across all kinds of different people. And so just knowing how you feel about that, and then also just making sure that you get some exposure to that. In addition, what you guys have available now, you guys have this amazing program available to you. First of all, we didn't have anything like this back when I was in school, but there are also different health sciences things. And I'm not sure exactly what I saw Thrall, and I saw a couple other high schools on there, what they have available, but there's workforce. I know that I don't want to say solutions, but there's workforce programs out there that students can join to get access to some of the different hospitals or get some tours. I know also there's some camps. I know Ascension Seton used to, I'm not sure if they're doing it this summer with everything going on, but they used to have a camp for health professionals that were interested in learning more about all different professions in the healthcare industry. So all of those things I think are great. If you have opportunity to visit any of those camps or any of the different programs they have, including this one, I think that's a great opportunity for you guys. Just exposure to figure out if this is really, what you want to do.
That's awesome. And we've heard that from all of our guest speakers so far, is get out there and talk to people, because it is important. You're making a big decision for the rest of your life, and that is key. And, students, if you're taking your health science classes at your high school, as part of those, when you get into those upper division classes or junior and senior level, you do get to have some of those opportunities to go visit different clinics and have an opportunity to maybe shadow a nurse and work with nurses. And then the Seton, fortunately, the Seton camp is still going on, but COVID did kind of throw it off this year. So hence why we're kind of trying to put together the speaker series to get and educate students about all the opportunities and make the best out of a tough situation this summer.
Well, and now that you mention that, I do remember being in the NICU and seeing students come in from different high schools. Yeah. And they got to come with a registered nurse in the NICU and, help us with our babies as we were caring for them. So it was a really awesome opportunity. I didn't have anything like that in high school, but I know that they have that available for you guys now, and I highly encourage you to take advantage of it, whatever you have available to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, for some of you all, you might have the opportunity to pursue like an industry-based certification, such as a medical assisting or certified nursing assistant. And those are great skills to learn. Even if you don't stick with that career, it's kind of a bridge to continue your education and build it up to maybe that BSN a little bit later. So yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. That's great advice. All right. All right. So could you tell us a little bit about some of the job duties that we can kind of look at, maybe some of the advanced practice nursing. So you've talked a little bit about research, and then your role is kind of the doctorate of nursing practice and what you can do with that. Could you tell us a little bit about what nurse practitioners can do? And I'm probably missing another advanced degree because it's changing so rapidly that sometimes I forget a few of them. So
I believe there are 4 total, and I'm with you. I forget them also. I know the nurse practitioner's one. I think there's a midwife. There's one in public health, I believe, and maybe a nurse anesthetist. I can't remember. I think there's 4 of them, and I probably got those wrong. But as far as a nurse practitioner, and in general, most of the advanced practice nurses, but for specifically the nurse practitioner, their role is very different from the bedside nurse, from what you go in with your RN and you work at the bedside or in a clinic or in a doctor's office. or wherever you are, the role of the nurse practitioner is very different. It's more similar to what you would find in the medical doctor's role. Um, you have to know that their difference is that we're the bedside nurse, we're there all day, we're taking care of our same patients all day. I'll use the NICU as reference. I had 3 babies, and I made sure that their meds were given on time, and their diapers were changed, and they were being fed on time, and all of their treatments were being done. Well, the reason I was doing all those things is because I had a practitioner that wrote those orders for me. And so the nurse practitioner, or the medical doctor, but I'll focus on the nurse practitioner, their role is different in that they are able to diagnose and treat. And so they come around and they still do assessments on their patients, but their job mainly is to sort of gather all the data that the nurse has put into the computer or the chart or whatever is there, and they diagnose and treat. And when I say treat, they're able to prescribe medications. I believe all 4 of those advanced practice nurses are able to prescribe medications to some limit. And they sort of work in conjunction with the medical physician or the doctor. So a very different role. If anyone is considering an advanced practice degree in the future, again, I would highly encourage you, once you do become a nurse, to spend some time with those people, because I have known people that do go that route and become a nurse practitioner specifically, and then don't like it because they wanted to be a nurse and they thought it'd be different. And then they go in and they find that they don't get to spend as much time with their patients, and they're moving around more quickly. So really investigate if that's really the route that you want to go, what they actually do, because their job duties are very different. For instance, I took care of 3 patients in my 12-hour shift, and a nurse practitioner in my unit would come in and care for 20 or 30 babies at a time, because they'd come around and they saw all the babies and assess them and diagnose and treat. So it's just a very different role. And those are sort of the things that I hear come up with nurse practitioners across the way as far as the differences. But it's also very rewarding. So in my world, I don't get to diagnose and treat. Even if I know something's wrong and I can put my finger on it and I know what to do about it, that's not my role. My role is to report that to somebody else. And so as a nurse practitioner, you have that ability to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to treat with this medication, or we're going to put them on this treatment plan. And so you get to make a big difference in someone's life by doing those things. So there's some positives to that as well.
Awesome. And, I like, once again, how you really put an emphasis on shadowing and making sure that that is the correct profession for you, because it is important. And you may get into a position and you may say, wow, this is not exactly what I thought it would.
It is. And a nurse practitioner, any advanced practice school you go to, it's an additional, usually a couple years additionally. And there's usually some sort of state exam, or you sit for an exam at the end to pass that board exam as well. So it's not something you just decide, I want to be a nurse practitioner, and you go to do that. It's a big step. And so I have known lots of nurse practitioners that love what they do and they don't regret a day about that. But I also have known some, I work with one actually, that would tell you that was something she may not have chosen to do if she really, really thought through that process. So I encourage anybody, anytime you're thinking about doing something different, to really reach out and spend some time thinking about it and maybe shadowing to see if it's really something you're interested in.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Looking at our last question before I turn it over to the audience. And audience, if you have thinking of some questions, please go ahead and include those in the chat box, and I'll get to them here in just a few minutes. But could you tell us a little bit about nursing school? What is it like? And if you don't mind, let's start from maybe just getting into nursing school, because it can be very highly competitive. What makes a good candidate for nursing school?
Oh, you're asking a great question, because I think this is not something that's put out there very easily or very well. So I mentioned that most nursing programs are pretty much standard as far as their curriculum and what we have to teach in each program, whether it's associate degree, bachelor's degree. Those two are the common ones. That they're pretty, even in my accelerated BSN program, the courses are pretty standard. Nursing school is highly competitive. I don't think they broadcast that well. Even for myself, when I went straight to UT San Antonio, I thought it was just going to be an easy in to transfer over to nursing school and have no problem. I think I had a 4.0 in my pre-nursing courses, and I think I had like a 3.8 or something in my other classes. And I did not get into nursing school my first time. I'm here to tell you that. It is very competitive. I applied to UT Health Science Center, and when I didn't get in, I was shocked, because nobody tells you that, how difficult it can be to get into any of these health professional schools, but specifically for nursing school. The type of person you need to think about molding yourself into, or you need to be aware of, is that you have to have really good study habits to be in nursing, in a nursing program anywhere. And even just that application process and getting yourself ready, be aware that it takes great study habits and a lot of organizational skills to be able to make it there. So once you are able to get through those couple years in your prerequisites and you apply to nursing school and you get in, you're so excited, yay. And then you realize that it's harder than anything you could have ever imagined in nursing school. And it doesn't matter what nursing program it is. Like I said, I went to UT Health Sciences Center and it was very intense. I taught for Austin Community College. It was very intense. And now I teach for Texas Tech and it's very intense. So it doesn't matter which program it is. They're all very similar. The students that do well in nursing school in general, like I mentioned, have great organizational skills. They have good time management skills. They are some that have acquired good study habits over the year. It's not something you can wake up one day and just be like, I know how to study well. Those are things you learn over time. So the students that I see now in nursing school that tend to do really well are those that have worked hard to get there and to kind of gain those characteristics or qualities, if you may, to have that. But nursing school stuff.
Yeah. I have heard from lots of people it is. I haven't been through nursing school personally, but a lot of people have told me it's extremely hard. Outside of grades and maybe even SATs and SATs, what else can students kind of build into their school resume that's going to make them an even better candidate to get into a nursing program?
I remember, and I will say that even to this day, I think volunteer work is good, or shadowing someone. If you have a family member that works in a hospital somewhere and you're able to go visit for a day, or in a clinic and you're able to spend some time with someone, or even these types of programs that you're participating in, make sure you list those. It speaks volumes when you have that much interest that you've actually gone above and beyond and taken these opportunities that you didn't have to do, but you chose to do. I think those are really important. I also think just, again, spending time with people. Anytime you can volunteer and work with different types of populations or different communities out there, and you can list that on your resume or however you're building it to send that off to schools, I think that's important as well. Because I know I actually sit on our interview committees when we do accept applicants. And that speaks a lot to us when they can say that they've done these things to, I worked with these types of people, or I had this volunteer work, or I experienced this through like a shadow program that I shadowed, or did these sort of workforce programs. That speaks a lot, because it meant that even though they were having to work through all those prerequisite courses and maintain their grades and do all those things, they still were able to go and seek out other opportunities that would help them in the long run. So I think those are important. Grades are not everything, I will tell you that. Grades are very, very important, and they look good on paper. But when you're having to sit in front of somebody, that can be a different thing, a different strength.
And that is such great advice, because as you mentioned, you had very high marks on your GPA, but you're also competing with however many other people that may have just as high a marks. So you have to figure out a way to make yourself stand.
And the thing, I actually was the type of person that asked about that, and that's exactly happened. They said everybody that applied had those grades. So they basically put us in a line and took what they could. And I think that was a very uncommon thing, that the grades were all that high that year, but it happens. I'm sure it will happen at different times and at different schools. So it does happen.
Yeah, that is great advice. And I really appreciate your thoughts on like the time management and organization, because when you come out of nursing school, that is so important as a nurse to have those foundational skills. So if you all are very organized and very good at time management, that is going to be a key thing that's going to follow you through your whole career. So that is just awesome advice to have. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. I did see a question come into the chat box. Let me open that up here. And the question comes from Molly Harper. And Molly asks, can you major in nursing in college and then go into workforce, or do you have to go to another school after college?
So I think what you're asking is sort of like what I did. I went to UTSA and then had to transfer to a different school. That's not always the way you have to do that. Some schools don't have a nursing program, like UT San Antonio did not have a nursing program. So you go for your prereqs there, and then UT Health Science Center, which is just on the road, is where they had all their health sciences, all their health profession schools. But a lot of programs, like I know a lot of schools, UT Austin does, Baylor does, Texas Tech in Lubbock does. A lot of them have Texas Women's University. There's Texas State here. I mean, the list just goes on and on, that they have their nursing program on campus with them. And so you don't transfer to any other school. It'd be like any other degree that you went to major in. You'd start off as a freshman and your major would be nursing. But you wouldn't actually, and this is common for any degree you get, not just nursing. You don't really get into that meat and potatoes, so to speak, of your degree plan until your junior and senior year. So the same thing is with nursing. You'll go through those first 2 years and you take a lot of prerequisites, your English classes, all the science classes, and any math you have to take, any of the classes you have to take to get into nursing. And then you do have to apply to a nursing school, whether you're at a school that has a nursing program or you're going to a different school. I don't know of any that just has an automatic admission. I think they all make you apply into that. I think UT did something different. I think they're accepting freshmen into what they consider their nursing program, and then you're going through the 4 years as a nursing major. It just varies where you go, but you don't always have to go out into the workforce and then come back to school to become a nurse. You can go straight into, Austin Community College and then earn an associate's degree and then become an RN, or you can, go to UT Austin or Texas State or wherever you need to go, and go for the time you're there, graduate with a nursing degree, take the state board, become a nurse, and then start working. It just depends on what route you go. Does that answer your question?
I think that does a great job of it. And let's say you were doing your prereqs at maybe, let's say UT, but then you get into the nursing school at Texas State. Would you expect there's going to be maybe some prereqs that a student would have to redo, or maybe something else as part of their degree plan? Or are they pretty formalized in how they're put together?
They're pretty formalized. And it's not uncommon that when you are ready to go to nursing, your junior and senior year, so apply to nursing school, that many people, including myself, you apply to several different nursing programs because, again, it's highly competitive. And you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. And so if you're at UT, I can tell you UT's nursing program is just as competitive as any others. And, there is a chance that you wouldn't get into that first choice nursing program that you wanted to go to. And so many times people have second and third choices that they've also applied to. And sometimes it does require that you leave that school to go to another one. You could always wait, see if you went on a wait list at wherever you were at and try again the next semester. But I know many people that have actually left the school they were at and then went to a different campus and different college or university to go to nursing school. So it's not uncommon. I think ideally you want to stay in the same school, but I will tell you that it's not uncommon to apply for several different nursing programs because it is so competitive.
That's really good to know. And it's just one of those things we have to be aware of. It looks like Molly has another question here. So for the longest time, she said she's wanted to be a labor and delivery nurse, but what are the benefits of working in the NICU over labor and delivery?
So the benefits are there for both. I think the NICU and the L&D work very closely together because for the NICU environment, we attend deliveries. I didn't mention this, but when I was at Ascension Seton, Austin, I also worked at the hospital in Williamson, so SMCW. And when I was there, since it was a smaller facility, and this might help you know where you want to work at eventually, even though I was a NICU nurse, we didn't always have babies in the NICU, so we'd go to the L&D unit and help in the L&D unit. And so we attended deliveries. We helped in the newborn when they were coming in to get their bath and their shots in the newborn nursery area. We helped in that area. So I don't think that there's one more benefit to the NICU versus L&D. I think it depends on whether you're more interested in working with babies or with moms and babies. And you have to think about NICU, you sometimes have very small babies or very ill babies, and you have to be aware of that. I know that, babies typically go 40 weeks gestation before they're born, and in the NICU environment, you can have babies born at 23-ish weeks and still, survive and be okay. But when they're born, they weigh less than a pound. And so they may not be what you're considering as what you're thinking of babies. So really knowing what those environments are, because they're very different. And I think the benefits are there for both of them. L&D nurses love what they do. NICU nurses love what they do. It's just figuring out which one is more appealing to you. And then you can also find environments, like I mentioned, Seton Williamson. And I apologize, I know this is Ascension Seton also, but I worked only in Austin for Ascension Seton, so I can't speak a whole lot to St. David's, but I know that they're very similar as well. There's different facilities where you can do both. I know in the NICU at Williamson and Hayes, I was NICU nurse, but then we also attended deliveries. So, and helps in the newborn nursery. So you get to kind of cross that a little bit. And you can also cross-train. Cross-training is always there for you. So if you decide to go L&D and then think I might want to learn some more about NICU, there's always, like I said, your learning's never ending. You can always reach out to the managers and say, I'd like to kind of cross-train and get some exposure to NICU. And that's usually there for you. You can usually do that and cross-train over.
That's great to know that they're always open to that. I think they're, looking at another avenue to work with babies. Could you tell us a little bit about postpartum? Because that's a big part of working with the babies and mom as well.
It is. So I think the difference between like L&D and postpartum, L&D is up to the birthing process. And at that point, they're out and they go to postpartum. And so then mom and baby, then instead of having one patient, you go to having a couple, you have two patients. And the postpartum is after delivery up until discharge, which can be anywhere nowadays from, if it's a normal delivery, it can be anywhere from 24 hours to up to 3 days, I think, after a C-section potentially. But that becomes more of helping mom heal, helping mom get herself recovered after delivery, and then also helping the baby. At that point, you have two, making sure the baby's stable, making sure that the baby responded well to delivery, and that they are transitioning from being inside mom to being outside of mom, and they're transitioning well. So at that point, sometimes, more times than not, they do fine and they go home. And then at that point, so there's a few percentage, I think it's a very small percentage, but there are some that end up going from there to the NICU because they aren't responding well to extra uterine life, we call it, or outside of mom. So I think the biggest difference is L&D is more, that delivery phase where their mom's birthing baby. And there's also another piece to that, the antepartum, that is not always mentioned. Antepartum is before labor and delivery. So moms that sometimes come in and are on bed rest for different reasons, or we're trying to stop them from going into labor because it's too early, or there's some kind of complication happening, they can be on the antepartum floor as well. So antepartum, and then labor, delivery, postpartum, and then NICU, they all work together well. And we all, I know for NICU, we always go to antepartum and see who's there. Do we have any moms that are, really preterm that we need to be aware of and have a bed ready for? So they really do work as a team. You have to just kind of figure out what is most interesting to you.
Yeah, that's really cool. And there's so many opportunities to work with mom and baby throughout the whole process, from before birth all the way through the end after it happens. So that's really cool. Audience, I just wanted to give you another moment to pose any other questions that you have before we wrap up. But while you're doing that, I did have just one question about your education, Christina. And one thing you mentioned is that you didn't get into your nursing schools at first. What did you do during that gap time?
I was devastated.
Devastated. That's a big part of it, right?
Most people, I was a high achievement, motivated person, and I was devastated that I didn't get in. So what I did was, and at that point, I was the person that put all of my eggs in one basket. I didn't apply to any other nursing school because I thought that was just going to happen. And that's when I say it's not really broadcast well, that it's not an automatic thing to go into the next phase into nursing program. I didn't know that. I was a first generation college student. I did not know much about the whole system. And so in my mind, I thought, I'm just going to go from one to the other. It's going to be fine. And so when I didn't get in, that was was an eye opener. And so I'm from the Austin area. So I came back home and I went to UT Austin. There were a couple additional classes that UT Austin required to get into their nursing program that UT Health Science Center did not. And so and that was very specific things for UT Austin. That's not always common that way. But I came back first semester and took their specific classes that they wanted for their nursing programs that I could apply the next semester to both programs. By the time that I finished that semester, I'd already been accepted to the one in San Antonio. So I just finished that semester and went to San Antonio. But I guess I could have taken the semester off, but I was so motivated. I wanted to be a nurse pretty badly. So I went to another school, took some classes to, be able to have more options. And then by that time rolled around, I had gotten into nursing school, but it was devastating. I don't think in a high school, when I graduated high school, I can tell you for certain that I did not know the uphill battle it would be to get through all of those programs. I did not know that it wasn't in fact, UT San Antonio advertised it as a 2+2 program, meaning I just thought I would just go right into UTSA and transfer right over to nursing school and it would be fine. And in reality, that is not the way it is anywhere you go. You have to apply somewhere else, whether it be at the same school you're at or apply to a different school where you want to go to. So that is something I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, and I think it's a good lesson to really ask questions, because sometimes the marketing may kind of tell you one thing, but it may not be the reality of, that how they let people into that program. So that is great advice. And it's so interesting that, you had to move to Austin and back to San Antonio. So it's kind of like
Good.
back and forth as you were kind of waiting to make that transition into nursing school. So once again, flexibility is so important, and being willing to get out there and, figure out some other paths if needed. So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Doesn't look like there's any other.
Well, I also want to share that also because, failure is not bad. Sometimes when things don't go your way, you learn from it, you get stronger, and you come back and you get stronger at it. So I think it's important when things don't go your way to say that and to say what you learned from it and that you keep going. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that is so true. I think that's sometimes one of the hardest things to teach, and it's just something that you have to be prepared for and ready to take on if it does happen. When it does, I guess is the best way to put it. So, yeah. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. I just wanted to take a moment. So once again, thank you, Dr. Hernandez, for joining us today, and so excited to get your expertise and your thoughts on what it's been like to be a nurse, and then also go through your educational pathway. And just wanted to kind of let everybody know that this will eventually be posted on the YouTube page for Workforce Solutions Capital Area. And there's some other videos there you might want to check out about different career options that you may be considering. So check those out. And as always, thank you for your help, Christina, and Texas Tech.
You're welcome.
Ascension Seton, Workforce Solutions, and then Region 13. We've all been kind of teaming up to make sure we make the best of this COVID world while we're waiting for the vaccines to come out, hopefully one day.
Yes.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, everybody, and take care. We'll see you soon.